Hello there and welcome to Ranting Viking video. In this video we'll be looking at 5 reasons why the Vikings did not settle North America. The Vikings made landfall close to the Arctic region of North America after 1000 AD. This was nearly 500 years before Christopher Columbus was able to land in North America. Since the start of the 8th century, the Vikings of Scandinavia had started to explore the foreign lands to both their east and to their west. The Vikings wanted to find fresh lands to settle, as this meant there would be greater riches to plunder. By the time of North America's discovery, the Vikings had already claimed territories across the European continent. Their Norse culture ruled supreme in those isolated islands that acted as stepping stones across the North Atlantic. Ultimately, these Viking visitors did not heavily influence the Americas, and their achievements in reaching these distant lands have often been overlooked by those who now call this continent their home. Here are 5 reasons why the Vikings never successfully colonized North America. 1. America was already inhabited. The lands that Leif Erikson first landed on were inhabited by Native Americans who did not take kindly to foreign visitors. Often these tribes were at war among themselves, as their territorial borders were in a permanent state of flux. The written records held in the Old Norse sagas indicate that at least one of the Viking explorers who reached North America met their end at the hands of these native tribes. The Vikings did not have the manpower to stage a full invasion or forced settlement of these lands, as their supply lines were chronically overstretched. The nearest Viking settlement to the coast of modern-day Newfoundland was in Greenland, and this was over 800 miles away, and the sea conditions were often far from ideal. 2. The Greenland settlements were too small. The settlements in Greenland that were once ruled by both Eric the Red and Leif Erikson were once the wild frontier of Viking civilization. These lands were not totally self-sufficient for most of their existence. It has been speculated that these settlements had to be resupplied from the Orkneys and Iceland. The trade of ivory from the local sea mammals in Greenland was the major export from these colonies, and these would have been bartered for important supplies from mainland Europe. There seems to have been little enthusiasm to settle Greenland due to its distance away from the Viking homelands, and there were other areas of Western Europe that offered better opportunities for those who were adventurous and brave. 3. There was little enthusiasm to settle the Americas. Between 1000 AD and 1066, Europe was being carved up by the Christian kings of Europe. It made no sense to send able-bodied men to the far-flung lands of Greenland and the Americas, when many leaders needed these troops to consolidate their own position. Conflict in Europe was constant, and there were great riches to be had by staying close and loyal to the action. Victories in battle meant that warriors would be rewarded with fresh lands that could be farmed and families could be raised. These military successes elevated the victors' status in society and offered their future generations a level of security that could not be ignored. The Viking rulers were preoccupied with securing their own empires and carving up areas within the British Isles and the rest of Western Europe. There was no need to stretch resources towards distant and uncharted lands, when for less effort established lands could be secured. The Viking leaders in Europe knew they could never effectively control these new colonies to the west, as they had little control over Greenland, and no ruler wanted to invest their wealth in unknown settlements nearly 2,500 miles away. 4. Greenland had been a failure. The poorly executed settlement of Greenland had put many off travelling too far westward. Greenland was thought to be a scam. Its name alone conjured up lands fit for farming and livestock, when in fact much of Greenland at the time was covered in ice. The Viking settlements would have been places that required a lot of work, and relations with the native peoples of these new colonies would have been difficult. The Vikings of Scandinavia did not adapt to the methods of the native population, and this made their job infinitely harder. Although Greenland's coastal areas would have looked very much like the fjords of their homelands, Greenland was a different environment to the ones that the Vikings knew. The leaders of the Greenland settlement may have forbidden further adventure to these new western lands. They knew that every able-bodied man would be needed to ensure the settlement's survival. Greenland needed more settlers, but they were never able to get the people across the ocean. 5. America was a high-risk adventure. Greenland, as a staging post to American exploration, was a failure. There was starvation and disease at various points of its habitation. Because of a lack of immigration, Greenland never grew with the times. It was unable to become a staging post towards America, and its resources were very limited. There was no abundance of timber, and Greenland was never self-sufficient. Any explorer wanting to establish a base in North America was bound to encounter shortages in every area. The Vikings did not know the area, and they could not rely on the native population for assistance. The lands where the Vikings landed were very different from what they were used to. Many of the Viking settlers from the new Greenland colonies were more inclined to return home to Scandinavia than to push west to establish new American settlements. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, share and subscribe.